This is not child's play. Here's your look at the new NECA toys, Puppet Master, Ultimate Tunneler, and Pinhead. And now a box of little toys has become a gang of little terrors. NECA is proud to present the Ultimate Pinhead and Tunneler 2-pack from the cult series Puppet Master. Each figure stands approximately 4.25 inches tall, representing the classic look of each puppet with accessories themed to the character's appearance across several films in the franchise. Pinhead includes 2 interchangeable hands, a fire poker, a vial of rejuvenation liquid, a wrench, and hooks. Tunneler is armed with a grease gun and pickaxe, along with interchangeable heads, hands, and an alternate bloody drill top. Comes in a window box packaging replicating Andre Toulon's puppet case. Before we get this review started for Puppet Master's Ultimate Tunneler and Pinhead, I feel like I need to throw in some necessary 411. Not to surprise everybody immediately by bringing in my trusty tape measure, but I'm going to take this. I'm going to calculate just how tall these figures actually stand. While I'm doing this, I'd like to as well thank the folks over at NECA Toys that provided the sample of Tunneler and Pinhead that we could have a look at in this review. Starting first with Tunneler, the figure stands 4.4 inches in height. Let's switch that quickly over to centimeters, revealing that Tunneler is 11.3 centimeters tall. Switching that back over, getting it back to inches. There we go. Let's take it to a personal favorite of mine, Pinhead. No, not that Pinhead. Taking it to the very top of his head, the figure is 4.3 inches in height. Switching again over to centimeters, revealing that Pinhead is 11.1 centimeters tall. Let's take this duo now and turn it into a quartet, bringing in the other figures that we've looked at before. Here he is next to, or at least here they are next to Blade. And we also had a look at Torch. I have in some ways also categorized these with the figures that stand pretty good on this side and the figures that have a little more difficulty of standing on the other side. But it kind of gives you a good idea of how these figures are going to be sized with one another. I'm certainly looking forward to the rest of the remaining releases from NECA. Tunneler and Pinhead are fortunate enough to get as many accessories as they do. Quite the far cry from the Blade and the Torch that we looked at earlier. Starting first on the left side here, left side of the screen, of course, we're going to be looking at Tunneler's accessories, and we'll start first with his grease gun. The grease gun here is molded in all a dark gray plastic, and then on top of it, of course, as you can see, a brushing of silver paint gets added to it. It's a really nice little accessory. The benefit also of Tunneler is that he does have gripping hands right out the gates. As soon as you get him out of the box, he's got them on the ready to hold those accessories. Why don't we actually take those accessories? Knock it off. Let's take those accessories. You can actually fit one of them into his hand fine and good. And then he, again, like I said, he does have the other gripping hand to hold the other accessory. Let's get that back in his hand. There we go. Get the other accessory going. We'll put the figure down here for 1 second. The other thing he comes included with, for wielding at least, is a pickaxe. The pickaxe, as I'm describing it to you guys, is a dark gray handled weapon. And of course, on the end of it, some nice additional brushing of silver. Part of me feels like this pickaxe has been used before, and I would have to do a little bit more further research to see if they were using this accessory for another figure that NECA released prior. But for the time being, we can take the pickaxe, and again, we can put that into Tunneler's hands. One thing will result in this, for starters, he's going to have his hands full. Second of all, though, it's going to make the figure a little bit more front-heavy. Now, despite that, his feet, as small as they may be, still can sustain him, still can hold him upright. Unfortunately, though, we're not going to have as much of an easy time when it comes to Pinhead. More on that in a second. The figure also includes a swappable hand, which I guess you could say as an argument is a bigger grip, so it holds things better, like, for example, the grease gun or the pickaxe. Probably closer more to the grease gun, I think, hand for that, because, of course, the thumb's on that. Well, it doesn't really matter what side you put the weapons anyways. And then the last of his accessories for this will involve me picking up the figure. Let's go ahead and take the grease gun out of his hand. Put those to the side. He comes included with a swappable head sculpt. And I don't want to so quickly rush through the existing head sculpt before we look at the other one. Just want to show you what the stock head sculpt looks like. A nice touch, appreciated touch that NECA did. They actually put a spinning top to him. The spin drill is a little on the loose side, but at least I'll credit them for they actually made it so it would move. Be a little bit disappointed, I think, if Tunneler didn't actually have a moving drill. Head sculpt is pretty good on this one. If you prefer the other one, though, he has this one here. It seems like the mouth isn't that much different. It almost looks like there's a little less black, actually, in the interior of his mouth. But you can see his eyes are much more squinted. And this one also has inflicted some serious damage. To change out the heads, all you have to do is hold onto the torso for dear life. Careful, that may slip away from you. And then just go ahead and pop the other head on top. While you're doing this, you'll find the ball peg will shift around on you. But just go ahead and wiggle and twist that in place. And then once it's in place, then you've got this head as default. Again, spinning top. This spinning top is a little tighter than the other one. But again, just to show you the difference between the two. I probably would still go with this one because it's got the more open eyes of the two. Just again, appreciate the fact that they would have included a swappable head sculpt like this. Let's maybe stick with this one for the time being. Again, yeah, got some really nice detailing with the blood caked across the top of the drill. And again, I love the fact that the drill actually spins back and forth. Of course, for the rest of his outfit, he's got a military outfit. Seems some medals there also adorning the front of his outfit. It's kind of a dark forest green that they've used for his outfit with little accents of gold there on the sleeve. Got some gold there also on the bottoms end of his sleeve. I said sleeve, I think, for this, didn't I? Shoulder. Now, his torso tucks in a little bit. You'll see here on either side. They did this so that the figure has some additional upper torso ball joints, additional upper torso articulation. For that matter, it doesn't bother me the fact that that is tucked in. It is noticeable a little bit, yeah, because it doesn't go flush to the rest of his outfit. But if it does at least give him upper torso ball joints, as opposed to this just being all solid plastic, I'm kind of glad that they actually did put articulation on the figure's body. And of course, as we get further down, a little more of the continuation of that forest green coloring. And then, of course, you've got his boots down below. He does have ankle pivot articulation, something that all these figures so far seem to have had. I guess, speaking of articulation, we might as well just look at that right now. When it comes to Tunneler's articulation, as we've already seen, removing the head reveals the ball peg underneath. But because of that, it gives him quite a lot of range when it comes to moving his head. Up, down, back, forth, and of course you can rotate it all the way around. As for the arms hinge outward. I wouldn't be confident to say that that's a full 90-degree angle bend. It comes up, yes, admittingly a little short, probably about like a 50-degree angle bend. A lot of the culprit is the sculpting of the shoulder. Not only the top here, but the top here. Between the two, doesn't seem like you can get the arm past that point. At least nothing that I'm, again, comfortable. I could force it, but you know, forcing figures like that, bad things can come to the figure and to you. As for the arms rotate all the way around, like that. He does have a double or single hinge in the elbow, rotate back and forth. Double hinge actually goes to Pinhead. We'll look at more of that in a second. Hand rotates all the way around, hinges also back and forth. Already talked about the fact that the figure does have upper torso ball joint. Again, tucks in a little bit. Doesn't look too bad though. Legs split out. You can bring the legs forward and back. He does have a lower knee bend. You can also rotate the lower leg. And he also has foot articulation. Again, moving that back and forth and rocking it back and forth this way. I sort of feel, again, like Tunneler is the equivalent of Blade. A pretty lanky looking figure, but ideally still one that stands fine and good when you're putting him on a shelf. Unfortunately, though, when you move your focus over then to Pinhead, you sort of see there are some limitations. A lot of limitations that unfortunately plague this particular version. Pinhead comes with a lot of accessories. Let's have a look at those right now. Starting first, he comes included with a fire poker. Though, taking it out of the packaging for a second, I thought this was metal. It's just the way that they painted it in a nice gold. You can even see the end of the handle. Some really nice additional detailing added to that. Kind of looks like it would be a bottle opener. But it is plastic. It's more of a denser plastic. It's got a little bit of give, but a nice little fire poker to be displayed in his hand. He also has other things, like I said, to be displayed in his hand. A big giant wrench. A non-working wrench, just in case you're curious. You can't actually open and close this. It's just molded plastic, but again, a nice use of dark gunmetal gray and a scratching of silver paint across that. The figure also includes several hooks, a pair of hooks, and connected in the middle, you've got yourself a real rope. That's a nice touch. The hooks are of a, I wouldn't say very soft of a plastic, At least they've got a little bit of bend to it. Hey, look, I formed a heart of hooks. That's disturbingly romantic. These can also fit into his hands, but not the hands currently that are sitting in the sockets of his forearms. Stay tuned for that. And the last thing he comes included with, not counting, of course, the hands, is the vial of rejuvenation. Now, this liquid, as you can see, is just molded in there, but they've even done a nice job of rippling it. You can see how it's formed a spiral. That's a really neat touch. Again, it's just all molded clear plastic with, of course, some additional yellowish, kind of off yellow molded plastic at the bottom of it. And that can, of course, also fit into his hands. All the things I'm talking about can be held in his hand, can't do squat just yet until, of course, we have a look at the hands that come included with the figure. It comes with 2 different designed hands. You can see this one right here is more for smaller tools, for more intricately holding tools. Whereas this one looks like, well, I guess they're about the same. This one has a more of an open grip hand. You can see he's also wearing fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves. Lonely Island. But let's go ahead and take the existing figure, pick him up, of course, and we're going to go ahead and just pop the hands out of the sockets. Right now, he's got closed fists, which is fine. I don't mind the fact he does have closed fists, but of course, in order for him to hold any of the things we just finished talking about, of course, it would make some sense. We're going to want to swap those hands out, just pop them off the ball pegs, and then just replace with the existing hands. One thing you will want to be careful of is that the sleeve is a separate part to the rest of his, the cuff, I should say, is separate from the rest of the sleeve. So when you are taking off the hands, just make sure you're doing a check, a double check at the end of it to make sure that the cuffs haven't fallen off and haven't landed on the floor somewhere. We'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Again, just watch that sleeve, watch that cuff. Don't drop it, and we'll just go ahead and pop, again, the hand back into place. So now at least he has gripping hands. Unfortunately, though, that's sort of where the problem starts. I guess the problem was already started before this. I will say, like, Pinhead has some real difficulty standing. It already is the problem that he has such small feet, but then, of course, you factor in the size of his torso and his equally large-sized hands. I mean, you're really causing a lot of problems to these little tiny feet to have to deal with. Again, you can take any one of the things that we just finished looking at. So let's, for example, take the vial. For this, actually, it almost even helps to take the hand off of the ball peg and just pry the hand away from the palm. You really want to get that open as possible, as much as possible, and then just feed the vial through. Once that's in place, then it probably would make more sense just to pop that back onto the ball peg, just like that. I think when it comes to eventually, when I find a solution to the problem of getting this figure to stand, I'm probably going to display, I think, Pinhead with the vial, and I don't know, maybe the fire poker. But like I said, he has a lot to choose from. But unfortunately, though, here's the problem with the figure, is he has real difficulty standing. You sort of can compensate it by hunching him forward, kind of like this. But anything that you put into his hand is going to be a balancing act then to get the figure to stand properly. Again, a lot of times I just feel like I have to lean the figure forward, but he just has a real difficult time standing. This could also be remedied. Let's just go ahead and take the vial out of his hand for right now. This could have been remedied by the fact that they could have included peg holes in the undersides of his feet. What is underneath his feet is surprisingly R and L, just to tell you which foot is which. But like pegs on the undersides certainly would have helped these figures. Again, I find with both these sets, 2 figures of the sets stand good, Blade and Tunneler. 2 of the other figures, though, Torch and Pinhead, have some real difficulties standing. I feel like Pinhead might be the most difficult to stand. That is, if you don't put the flame into Torch's arm, then he has some difficult time standing as well. But I think I might just take, again, some sticky tack, putting it on the undersides of his feet, sticking him down onto a display stand. Then at least I could display him with a weapon, something to be put in his hands. Of course, he's advertised with these big, giant, mauling hands. I'd like to think at least I'd be able to put something in them. I'm definitely not going to be able to do that until I fix the problem with his feet. Let's get a closer look at his head sculpt. For this, I'll have to get really close. Really close. Really close. You can see he's got a little tiny head. It's so incredibly small. I mean, it's right. It's accurate to the way he looks in the movie, but it's just so remarkably small. The detailing for what little they had to work with. And what do we have for a comparison here? I don't really have a comparison. Do we have a comparison? It's basically about the size of the opening of the vial. And even then, it's even smaller than that. You can almost even not quite put his head inside the vial, but it's pretty tiny. Based on the size of canvas that they had to work with, I think NECA has done a really good job on the head sculpt. They've washed as well areas of the face so the details stand out just a little bit more. You can see it does have the one squinted eye and the other eye is open. But again, that's such a very tiny little head. Little tiny Pinhead. Of course, for the rest of his outfit, he's got his turtleneck sweater on. Sculpted pretty good as well. And then down to, of course, his fingerless gloves. Everybody was wearing fingerless gloves. We stopped doing that. And of course, when we get to his pants. Now, the interesting thing about his pants is, if you look at his torso, this is all soft plastic. So essentially, it looks like what they've done is they've taken it and put it over top of, I can't say an existing torso body, but there's definitely something sculpted underneath that. And some nice sculpting as well. I'd have to go back and see when he does move, if there's a little gap that forms here, and you see the coloring of an undershirt underneath it. And then from there, it's sort of got like slacks. Little tiny miniaturized slacks. Who's making outfits for these puppets, I ask myself. The detailing is sculpted nice there on the legs and the top of his torso as well. But then again, you get to the smaller sized feet like this, and that's a lot to contend with, especially when you're looking at the rest of his body like this. For the articulation on Pinhead, his head rotates all the way around. Probably, this could be one of the smallest heads I've had to rotate in a review. It is actually on a peg system, so you can see there's the post, and right at the very bottom of that, there's the ball peg. And that rotates, like I said, all the way around if you want to. Up, down, back and forth. It seems also that, surprisingly, he's got a secondary ball joint at the base of the neck. I almost feel like that wasn't even necessary. You get already so much going on with the head, though. Why did it have to have a secondary ball peg right at the base of the neck? But it definitely seems like it's a separate piece. In fact, you can see me moving and shifting the top of his turtleneck sweater. I think they could have easily just sculpted that to the rest of his body and called it a day, but I guess appreciated the fact that they actually would have done that. As for the arms, though, his arms hinge out, and you get a lot more mileage from his arms than you could from Tunneler. The arms rotate all the way around. And again, this is all soft plastic that they've used here. It's more solid up at the top and a little more softer down below. He does have not one, but two hinges in the elbows. You can rotate them that way, and you can also rotate the hands all the way around. Sometimes while you are rotating, you'll see the cuff of the sleeve wants to go along for the ride. I guess it's not hurting anybody. Yeah, come on. Sleeve cuff, come along with us. Upper torso is on a ball joint, so you can rotate that all the way around. Legs split out. Get a full splits happening here for Pinhead. Legs go forward and back. He has a lower knee bend, which also rotates the lower leg. And then he has little tiny feet. I know I keep bringing everyone's attention to his little tiny feet, but there's an ankle pivot. There's that. So you can move it back and forth. There's that. But unfortunately, though, yeah, this figure is going to have some real difficult time standing. Even just stock, even just putting his, let's just say, swapped in hands and just getting him to stand without anything in his hands right now, the figure has some difficult time standing. All of it is contributed really to the fact he's got a really large torso. His head isn't an issue because his head's so microscopic, but his upper torso is so big. And then all of that is sitting on little tiny feet. He stands with difficulty without even having anything in his hands. You can imagine how much more difficult it is to then put things into his hand and get Pinhead to actually stand on his own. I had, in the previous final looks of Blade and Torch, expressed my sheer joy the fact that we were finally getting ourselves Puppet Master figures, a franchise I consider very obscure. Not every horror fan out there has watched the Puppet Master film, so the very idea that we are getting ourselves Ultimate Puppet Master figures from NECA Toys, I say well done, and I quietly clap in the background so it's not going to distract my voice here in final looks. The figures look fantastic, and in a case certainly when we're looking at these two figures, at least Tunneler and Pinhead get a lot more accessories than the previously looked at Blade and Torch. Tunneler doesn't have so much of an issue of swapping out things into his hands, and of course he also has the swappable head sculpt with the bloodied drill tip, and that's a nice touch. Unfortunately, though, like I said already a couple of times in this review, Pinhead has a bigger problem when it comes to him standing. Standing already on his own is an issue. And then, of course, when you're putting things into his hands, it's the only thing I would have done differently to this line. I'm happy with the sculpting. I'm very happy with the paint job. I'm thrilled, again, the fact that we are even getting Puppet Master figures. But I do really feel like this line needed to have peg holes on the undersides of their feet. Two of the figures, if you look at kind of half each of the sets, Tunneler and Blade, no problems. I could get accessories into their hands and they stand fine and good. But then the other end of it, Torch with the flame attached to his forearm causes the figure to fall over. And then, of course, trying to get anything into Pinhead's hands, which I would really like to display this figure with things in his hands. It's really just going to cause real problems with getting the figure to stand properly. So I'm going to see if I can try to affix his feet to a display stand, whether I use, I don't know, sticky tack, double-sided tape. I really don't want to use glue because that's not the route I want to go. But I'm going to have to see if I can find some way of stabilizing him onto a display stand. So at least I can display him with some of the cool accessories that NECA Toys packed with these two figures. Again, it's the only thing I would have done differently to this line is incorporated, I feel, some much appreciated, much needed peg holes in the undersides of the figure's feet. That's it. What do you guys think of this line so far? Have you been collecting any of the Puppet Master figures? Again, we've gotten ourselves Blade and Torch. And now in this review, of course, we looked at Tunneler and Pinhead. So thankful, again, the fact that we are finally getting ourselves Puppet Master figures. Now, after wrapping up the review of now the second set that we've been looking at, I now feel inclined to kind of go through all the Puppet Master films. Some of them aren't the greatest. But again, if you start watching the franchise, after a while, you sort of start getting into, okay, this is what you're kind of going to expect from a Puppet Master movie. It's sort of like Fast and Furious. You sort of go in knowing it's going to be just over the top and unrealistic. Puppet Master's not quite dealing with cars, but you sort of kind of after a while say, okay, yeah, it's a Puppet Master movie. No, it's fine. You have to kind of tell the person sitting with you, no, it's fine. This is a Puppet Master film. Big thank you, though, to the folks over at NECA Toys that provide the sample of Puppet Masters, Tunneler, and Pinhead that we could have a look at in this review. If you guys are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and that, yes, make sure you're coming back to this channel because we will be looking at more NECA reviews. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.